My name is Henry, and I've always been a practical guy, you know? The kind of person who needs to see something to believe it. Ghosts, spirits, all those supernatural things, they were just stories people told to scare themselves, or so I thought. I never imagined that one day I'd be the one telling a ghost story of my own. So it happened a few years ago. I never really believed in ghosts, until I moved to Hollow Creek. It's funny how life can take you to places you never imagined. Places that challenge everything you thought you knew. For me, it all started when I lost my job in the city. I was devastated. Not just because I was out of work, but because it felt like my life was unraveling. My girlfriend had just left me. My friends had moved on, and I was left with nothing but an empty apartment and too much time to think. One night, I sat in my living room, staring at the walls, feeling like I was drowning in my own thoughts. That's when I got the call, a job offer, out of the blue, in a small town called Hollow Creek. It seemed like a lifeline, a fresh start. Without thinking twice, I packed my bags and left the city behind. When I arrived in Hollow Creek, it was as picturesque as I'd imagined. Rolling hills, dense forests, and the kind of quiet that felt both peaceful and unsettling. The town was small, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and rumors spread like wildfire, but I didn't care about that. I just needed a change, and this town seemed like the perfect escape. The house I rented was old, with a history that the locals were more than eager to share. They called it the Hollow House, a place steeped in mystery and whispered tales of tragedy. I didn't pay much attention. I was too focused on starting over, on putting the pieces of my life back together. The first few nights in the house were uneventful. I unpacked, settled in, and tried to adjust to the silence that comes with living in the middle of nowhere. But it wasn't long before I started to notice things. It began with small, almost imperceptible noises, the creak of floorboards in the middle of the night, the sound of soft footsteps on the stairs. At first, I dismissed it as the house settling, or maybe even the wind, but as the days went on, the noises became more frequent, more deliberate. It felt like someone, or something, was in the house with me, watching, waiting. One night, as I lay in bed, I heard it again, a faint whisper, just outside my door. My heart pounded in my chest as I sat up, straining to hear. The whisper grew louder, more urgent, but I couldn't make out the words. I was frozen with fear, unable to move, unable to breathe. Then, the door creaked open, slowly, painfully slowly, as if someone was pushing it with just the tip of their finger. I stared at the doorway, expecting to see a figure, but there was nothing. Just darkness. The whispering stopped, replaced by an overwhelming silence that felt like it was pressing down on me. I finally found the courage to get out of bed and approach the door. My hands were shaking as I reached for the light switch, but before I could turn it on, I felt a cold breeze pass by me, like someone had brushed past me in the dark. My skin prickled with fear as I quickly flicked the light on, but the hallway was empty. I spent the rest of the night sitting on the couch, every light in the house turned on, trying to convince myself that it was just my imagination, but deep down I knew something was in that house with me. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I decided to ask around town about the house, hoping to find some logical explanation. The locals were reluctant to talk, their eyes shifting nervously whenever I mentioned the Hollow House. Finally, an old man at the diner told me what I had been dreading to hear. "There's a reason that house has been empty for so long," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Years ago, a family lived there. The father, he wasn't well. One night he lost control. He murdered his wife and children before taking his own life. Since then, no one who's lived there has stayed for long." I felt a chill run down my spine. Could it be true? Was the house haunted by the spirits of the family that once lived there? I didn't want to believe it, but the fear in the old man's eyes told me that this wasn't just some town legend. There was something very wrong with that house. At night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing the whispers, the footsteps, the creaking floorboards. It was as if the house was alive, breathing, moving, waiting for the right moment to strike. I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I had to leave, to get out before it was too late. I started packing my things in a frenzy, my heart racing. But as I was throwing my clothes into a suitcase, I heard it, a voice clear as day calling my name. My blood ran cold as I turned around, and there, standing in the doorway, was a figure, a man, pale and gaunt, with hollow eyes that bore into my soul. He took a step towards me, and I stumbled back, my legs giving out beneath me. The man's lips curled into a twisted smile, and he whispered, "You can't leave. You're one of us now." I screamed, scrambling to my feet, but the man was gone. The room was empty, but the air was thick with a suffocating presence. I ran out of the house, not stopping until I was in my car, speeding away from Hollow Creek. I never went back to that house. I left Hollow Creek the next day, never looking back, but the memories of that night have haunted me ever since. I still hear the whispers in my dreams, still feel the cold breeze on my skin, and sometimes, late at night, I wake up to the sound of footsteps outside my door and I know it's him. He's still with me, wherever I go. I thought I could escape, but some things, some places, never let you go. So if you ever find yourself in a place that feels wrong, where the shadows seem to move and the silence feels heavy, leave. Don't wait to see what's hiding in the dark, because once you've seen it, once it's seen you, there's no escaping it.
Hello everyone, I'm James, and today I want to share a story from when I moved to a small town while working on a project. This experience left a lasting impact on me, and I still think about it to this day. A couple of years ago, I rented an old house in a small town while I was working on a project. The place had character, creaky floors, old furniture, and of course, an attic that I never had a reason to go into. The landlord told me the house had been empty for a while, but I didn't think much of it. I was just looking forward to some peace and quiet. About a month into my stay, I started noticing strange things. At first, it was little things like doors being slightly ajar when I knew I'd close them, or lights flickering for no reason. I brushed it off as the quirks of an old house. But then, the noises started. Late at night, I'd hear footsteps above me, like someone was walking in the attic. At first, I thought maybe it was an animal, but the footsteps were too heavy, too deliberate. It sounded like a person was up there, pacing back and forth. I was too scared to check, so I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just my imagination. But one night, the footsteps were louder than ever. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a flashlight and decided to confront whatever was up there. My heart was pounding as I pulled down the attic ladder and climbed up. The air was thick with dust, and the only light came from my shaky flashlight. As I reached the top, I scanned the attic. And that's when I saw it, a figure standing in the corner, facing the wall. It was dark, but I couldn't make out the shape of a person. I froze, my mind racing. Was it a squatter? But the way it stood there, motionless, made my blood run cold. I called out, but it didn't move. Gathering every ounce of courage I had, I stepped closer, and the figure slowly turned towards me. I'll never forget that moment. Its face, if you could call it that, was featureless. Just a smooth, pale surface, where eyes, nose, and mouth should have been. I screamed and stumbled back, nearly falling off the ladder. I didn't stop running until I was out of the house. I called the police, but when they arrived, the attic was empty. They found no signs of anyone ever being there. I moved out the next day. I don't know what I saw up there, and I don't want to know. All I know is that something was in that attic, and it wasn't human.